Alright everyone, you're welcome back to my class where we're discussing Stigma by Samson or Shobayo. Today we're looking at chapter 2 of the chapter 2 begins with Lanre. Lanre waited for 2 weeks before he could get the chance to speak to Nkiru. On the day he finally got this chance, he was in the cafeteria eating some pastries with a bottle of Fanta when he spotted Nkiru making her way to the cafeteria. Nkiru, on the other hand, had skipped the lecture to eat food as she was starving. She didn't eat breakfast that morning, and by that afternoon she could not bear the hunger pangs any longer. For her brunch, she ordered a plate of rice with fried plantain and a bottle of malt. She was so engrossed in her company that she did not notice any other person in the cafeteria. As Nkiru rushed through her food, Lanre watched her. He thought of going over to her table, but he changed his mind because he was afraid that it might ruin her appetite. And so he waited till she emptied her plate. She was then sipping her drink patiently when Lanre decided to join her. As Lanre approached her table, she raised her head to see him, but she kept a straight face. When Lanre asked her for permission to join her, she hesitated before permitting him. He joked about the absence of Tiwa, who he referred to as Nkiru's spokeswoman. He also joked about the speed with which Nkiru ate her food. Lanre introduced himself again to Nkiru, which prompted her to say her own name. This made Lanre very happy because he never imagined that Nkiru would be telling him her name that soon. Nkiru reprimanded Lanre for always calling Tiwa her spokeswoman, and he promised not to call her that again. Just then, Nkiru excused herself and returned to the lecture hall. Lanre was highly ecstatic that he finally got the opportunity to speak to Nkiru. As Nkiru walked back to her lecture, she wondered what Lanre might want with her. She even weighed him and her newly acquired boyfriend, Ola, and she made the decision to go with Ola while keeping Lanre as a casual friend. She made up her mind not to date both men at once, even though it was a common practice in the campus. By the time she got to the lecture hall, the lecture had ended and students were already leaving. She saw Tiwa already outside with her bag. Tiwa was not pleased that she had taken a very long time. When Nkiru mentioned that she had run into Lanre and that they had a good chat, she flared up in disbelief. Unfortunately for Tiwa, she made a comment that insinuated that Nkiru did not have decency and willpower. This got Nkiru upset, but Tiwa quickly apologized to her. Tiwa then reminded Nkiru of the nose piercing appointment they had. Nkiru was not interested in it, but Tiwa could not wait to get her nose pierced so that she can look as beautiful as Faye, who had pierced her nose earlier. Now, let us answer these questions while we wait for the second part of the story. Now that you're done with the questions, we can continue the story. When the two girls got to this hair salon, there was a lot of people in it getting their hair done. It was a very popular salon with a lot of apprentices. Women and young girls of all shapes and sizes were seen in the shop because the workers were reputed to know the trendy hairstyles. And so one of the girls finished piercing a woman's ear and was about to sterilize the piercing tool when a very terrible accident distracted her. By the time everyone returned from the accident site, she just picked the tool and pierced Tiwa and Nkiru's nose. Tiwa also pierced her ear. Later that evening, Tiwa and Nkiru went on a date with Chooks and Ola. 2 weeks after their piercing, Nkiru ran into Lanre again on her way to the pharmacy where she went to buy drugs for Tiwa, who had come down with catarrh. As they both walked to the pharmacy, they met Chooks and Ola in Chooks' car. Lanre joked about how Chooks and Ola were inseparable friends just as Tiwa and Nkiru were. Nkiru excused herself from Lanre and crossed over across the road to where Chooks and Ola were seated in the car. She informed Chooks that Tiwa had catarrh, but she was recovering. Ola asked her who Lanre was, and she informed him that he was just a friend that was accompanying her to the pharmacy to get drugs for Tiwa. Ola was not pleased about this, and he kept on throwing glances at Lanre from where he sat. Nkiru dismissed the two friends and ran over back to Lanre. When they got to the pharmacy, Lanre excused himself and continued on his journey. Nkiru returned from the pharmacy as soon as she could. In their room, Chooks and Ola were already with Tiwa, and while Chooks tended to Tiwa, Ola and Nkiru were embroiled in a fight about Lanre. As their fight intensified, Tiwa halted them with a protest over her worsening headache. She scolded Nkiru for getting involved with a good-for-nothing Lanre, wondering why Nkiru would not just distance herself from him. Just then, Chook stepped in to save the day by offering to buy everyone catfish pepper soup, popularly known as point and kill. And so they all drove off in the car. Now that we're done, let us look at why this chapter 2 is important to the development of the plot of the story. Chapter 2 is significant because from it we learn that when a person is determined, they would usually get whatever they want. How do we know this? Because when Lanre was determined to speak to Nkiru, he seized the opportunity the moment he got it and he achieved it. And that was how he got to know her name. Also, we get to know more about the character Nkiru, and we learned that she cares about her health and her well-being. We saw this when she forgot about her lecture and decided to go and eat a meal because when she missed her breakfast, she was very, very hungry. She prioritized her well-being over sitting with a hungry stomach in the lecture hall. So we can learn from there that it is important to prioritize personal well-being. Now, the third thing we gathered from this chapter is that it is good for one to have a mind of their own. This is because Nkiru entertained Lanre's company in the cafeteria regardless of Tiwa's reservation towards him. She was not afraid that her friend did not like the boy, yet she was able to talk with him that day in the cafeteria. So we can tell that Tiwa does not have that much of a stronghold on Nkiru because Nkiru has a mind of her own. Another thing we learned from this particular chapter is that it is important to set boundaries. Regardless of the fact that Tiwa and Nkiru were friends, the moment Tiwa made a condescending remark about Nkiru, she quickly corrected her. She expressed her displeasure over what Tiwa said, and immediately Tiwa apologized for that thing she said. So it's very important to set boundaries to protect oneself. Another thing we learned from this chapter is that Nkiru is a caring friend. She's caring because she went all the way to the pharmacy to buy drugs for her friend Tiwa who was down with cold. Finally, we also learned that Nkiru is very principled. She will never date two boys at the same time, even though it was a common practice then in school. And from this chapter, we get to know that a lot of girls double date in the campus, and it's a very bad thing. Now that we are done with the significance, let us reflect on this part. I want you to take a moment to think about the part of this chapter that struck a chord with you. What part of this chapter resonated with you the most? That either reminded you of something you have seen, read, or heard from anybody, either in a movie or from your parents. Think about it. We have come to the end. We have come to the end of this very chapter. In our next session, we're going to be talking about chapter 3. See you then. Bye.